You're listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast.
Welcome to the next episode of The Whole Truth podcast. I'm Paul Armstrong and I've just had a chat with Luke Hampson. Luke's the Managing Director of Nimy Resources. I think Luke has just pegged half of Western Australia. Nimy owns a project called Mons. Mons is right in the WA Greenstone Belt. It's a big lump of land and it's genuine greenfields exploration. They're now closing in on some fantastic nickel and lithium targets. He's been very busy behind the scenes for a long time and he's now identified a host of targets through geophysics, sampling and some drilling, and he's getting right down to the pointy end of greenfields exploration, with drilling going to resume in August to target lithium, nickel in the heart of Western Australia. Luke is very sincere, he calls it the way it is. He's worked very hard on this project for several years and it's getting right to the pointy end where the drilling will target some of these opportunities identified by the geophysics and the previous drilling. It's a story right at the turning point. I think you'll get a lot out of this chat. Luke, I think I'm talking to the bloke who's just pegged half of Western Australia, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a considerable amount of land, that's for sure. About 2,500 square kilometres. Yes.
And how did you come to get such a big lump of land right in the heart of a highly prospective mineralised belt?
Yeah, it was a progression. Back in 2015, we pegged a small amount of land, went out, rock chip, soil sampled, got a fair bit of encouragement around nickel in particular. It had hardly been any exploration there, probably a little bit in the early 90s, a little bit in the early 2000s, looking for gold. So we were the first ones, I suppose, in the area to look for anything beyond gold. So we were finding outcropping of nickel-enriched komatiite. So that gave us a bit of encouragement. And that was 2015 through to 2019-20.
So that was all happening before you floated Nimy on the stock exchange.
Yeah, that's right.
This was you working below the waterline, presumably, trying to piece together all these different lumps of land from here, there and everywhere.
Yeah, well, we were initially drawn to the area because of gold as well. You know, underexplored. People thought there was gold there before, so we go and have a look. But then nickel started to get a bit of momentum. About 2016, you started to see a fair bit around, you know, the future, if you like, of nickel with the electric cars and everything else that was sort of being muted at that point. So we saw some early numbers that said there'd be a short supply of nickel. So we started having a bit of a look at it and understanding what we might have. And from there, from that small holding, we extended that out prior to listing. Did 21 holes there prior to listing, hit a significant amount of nickel, low grade albeit, but a significant amount of intervals of nickel in, I think, probably about 16 of those 21 holes.
So it might help for a bit of context, Luke, if we explain the Mons Project is actually at the northern stretch of the Forrestania nickel belt. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So it sits probably equidistant between Forrestania and you and me. So it's a continuous, if you like, greenstone belt.
Some pretty famous names dotted along the path.
Yeah. Well, a lot of activity up at you and me. Everybody be familiar with that area. And certainly Forrestania in terms of nickel and lithium in particular.
So people walked your ground, obviously, for many years looking for gold. There were a few holes drilled, you said?
Yeah. Not a lot of walking of the ground because it's quite difficult terrain for people. Some people held the ground, never actually got out there. So I think it was early 2000s, there's a bit of drilling. That's the only bit of drilling that was there, and that was RAB and air core drilling, so not deep, down to about 50 metres, I think would be the maximum, maybe 70. But then with the RAB or the air core, as soon as you hit hard rock, that's pretty much it for you. So we were getting hints out of that data that there was some ultramafic containing nickel.
So you've got a whopping lump of land with a great address at the northern extension of a world-famous, world-class nickel belt that really, you're almost a pioneer, though, in many respects. You haven't got much to go on, have you? No one's really done a lot of legwork for you. No,
the soil, a little bit of soils and that little bit of drilling. But initially, it was the geophys as well. The magnetics that are there suggest that there's a greenstone belt there, or suggested that. Probably not to the extent that we've found out now, because we were concentrated on the more prominent magnetic signature. but we've actually done surveys, and we've merged all of the data that was available and extended that greenstone belt out to 80 kilometres.
So cutting to the chase, cutting to today's story, Luke, what do you now know about Mons other than the fact that it's a huge lump of land, it's a great address, it's a greenstone belt? So you're ticking a lot of the key boxes thus far. But what do you now know geologically about it in terms of, is there any mineralisation there?
Yeah, we know a lot more about it now. Obviously, we hit the ground running, did 6 diamond holes, which what that told us, we went down to about 870 metres, and we were in nickel to the bottom of that hole, so that was open. So those 6 holes, all significant amounts of nickel with visible sulfides in them. So we had a pretty good idea we're in a fertile nickel zone at that point. From there, to cover that big amount of ground, we went and did moving loop and in particular a big VTEM via helicopter survey, which covered probably 2/3 of the tenement holding. Now, if we were going to do just moving loop, we'd never get through that. So the VTEM was a pretty good tactic, and we came up with, I think, 39 different anomalies over, a couple of thousand square kilometres. And from there, we were able to, we used resource potentials as our geophysicists, and they went through and prioritised, and I think the announcement we put out this week was the first of those anomalies. We went and did moving loop over the top of them again and confirmed them, and the first one is a pretty strong anomaly in a pretty good geological setting, if you like, for it to be a nickel massive sulfide. So we know a lot more around the nickel. We know we've got a big system there.
Because you've intersected nickel, you've got assayed nickel in several holes, haven't you?
Yeah, in a lot of holes.
So you know there is nickel metal in the system?
Yeah.
Whether it's one system or multiple systems is still to be determined?
Yeah, it's still to be determined because it's such a big area. But, at this stage we're thinking it's one event. There's so little work been done on it previously. It's still open, but we think it's one event there. Big komatiite flows, and really we're looking for the. We've established, I think, that we've got a large low grade potential there, but really the icing on the cake and the thing that should be there is some concentrations of sulfides in the form of massive sulfides, and that's what the VTEM and the moving loop's been all about, is to find those concentrations for the high grade.
So it's a case of sort of cold, warm or hot, isn't it? You're trying to close in on the areas of higher grade mineralisation. Is that really the name of the game?
Yeah, that is the name of the game. If we wanted to just continue on and establish a large low grade resource, I think we can probably do that. But the higher grade, really that enhances the whole project. And in the washout, when it comes through at the end of the day, we'll have a large tonnage there in terms of low-grade nickel, but we're also aiming to get the high-grade areas, and that makes it much more chance of being commercial.
Now, your early work has come across lithium as well, and even rare earths potential. I suppose it's not surprising, given the size of the lump of land in the heart of Western Australia. History would suggest that you're probably going to have more than one mineral there if you have anything at all. Yeah. So tell us, in addition to the nickel story, you're trying to close in on the higher grade nickel areas now. That's what the geophysics is about. So that work's going on, and you're going to go and drill couple of those hot prospects, those targets that they've identified. But in parallel with that, you also have some lithium exploration underway, don't you? Yeah,
there's a couple of things. We've done a lot of soils. We picked up some really strong lithium soil anomalies, which are comparable to the Mount Holland deposit down at Forestania. So we drilled a few holes there, really just single lines, exploratory holes. We came up with fertile pegmatites there. So that was the last lot of drilling. And then we had a hyperspectral survey completed where we mapped the pegmatites and then mapped the spodumene, and there was another mineral too, another lithium mineral. I can't remember what that one was, but spodumene is what we're really interested in. And found that we've got a classic, what they call a Goldilocks zone, if you like, the contact between the greenstone belt and the granites. And so we're going after the more fertile areas there as per the hyperspectral survey. we've already started soil sampling over those with a view to drilling.
So that's very much the same story as nickel. You've got a large, lower grade area that you've now established as being mineralised, albeit lower grade.
Yeah.
And again, you're trying to use sampling and geophysics to close in on the higher grade spodumene.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really a repeat of the nickel story.
It is, yeah.
With replacing nickel with spodumene.
Yeah, yeah.
And just to complicate matters further, again, in this large lump of land, you've smelt a bit of rare earths, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. I suppose the irony in this conversation is that everyone's been there looking for gold. We went there initially looking for gold and we're finding everything but. So not to say that it's not there, but we've had low levels of gold, but nothing that's jumping out at us at this stage. So, the nickel and the lithium stories, I suppose, or the exploration that we've done, that those two are coming to the forefront. But on the rare earth one, we've got a feature there that presents as a carbonatite. We've done some holes, only 7 holes and reasonably shallow, I suppose, with 200 metres. We've done some of those, and we should be putting results out on that. But there's also, in the drilling that we've just done, we've possibly got some rare earth anomalies in those as well that we'll explore and see what happens there. But I would confidently say at this stage that for nickel, lithium and rare earths, we've definitely got a pretty good start on exploring a large area, and we're starting to narrow in on.
So you're closing in on these higher grade areas. That's the whole objective here.
Yeah. What
can people expect over the next few months? What action are you going to make in terms of advancing those 3 parallel stories, if you like?
Well, we got the VTEM plate, which we're going to go after as a matter of priority for the nickel. There's 3 other plates that are being reviewed and modelled as we speak. We've got the drilling results that we've just completed, where we've got a couple of really good nickel targets there as well. In terms of the lithium, we've got the obvious one that we put out, which is about 1.3 kilometres from the drill line. The hyperspectral points that out. But there's a number of other anomalous areas according to the hyperspectral survey that we're going to go after as well. And we've already started doing soils over those. So in terms of on the ground, we're already doing soils as we speak. Fergus, who's our geologist, he's on site doing soil sampling. We've got a drill program that we're putting together now, which we're hoping to get the drill on the ground around probably the end of August, I think, with all the approvals. So POWs have already started to go through. Heritage notices are being issued. So that process will probably take 4 to 6 weeks, I think. So by the end of August, we want to be drilling again at a lot better or a lot more resolved targets, if you like, around lithium and nickel. And the rare earth and a few other things that we're seeing, we'll continue to progress them and try to understand what the source of those anomalies are.
So the story's starting to get a pointy nose on it, isn't it? After a lot of broad brush sort of work, which you'd expect in a lump of land that size, you're closing in on your areas of interest. You've got drilling coming up in August. I mean, the company's at a bit of a turning point, isn't it? It's reached a pivotal chapter in its evolution, and to the extent that you've gone from broad brush exploration now into some much more focused, targeted drilling supported by the assays you've got thus far and the geophysics results. It's greenfields exploration is a somewhat tedious business early on. You've endured that phase, but it sounds like it's getting to the point now where you've got a good chance of the sort of sniff that would send the share price on a run.
Yeah, it could well do. I mean, I feel that way in terms of where we're at in the upcoming drilling. These are the best targets that we've had so far, and that's the evolution of the process.
And what's the company's market cap at the moment, Luke?
Around 20, I think, 20 million. Yeah.
So the leverage is enormous. Well,
If we get this right, and if we are right,
Now the chairman's done this before. Simon Lilly, he's the chairman of De Grey. Our listeners would be aware that De Grey is obviously one of the greatest gold discoveries of modern times in Australia, up in the Pilbara region there, multi-million ounce gold discovery that Simon's played a key role in. He's got a bit of an appetite for this story too, hasn't he? He's hoping that lightning might strike twice for him there.
I think so. Yeah. He seems. Well, I got Simon on board a couple of years ago before we listed, and that was really around the nickel potential. And he saw, I think, that the nickel market was moving. Also saw that there wasn't a lot of new areas being explored for nickel, and that aligned a little bit with his De Grey story, because as he'll tell you, everyone said there's no gold in the Pilbara, and they've managed to find quite a bit. So I think, Simon understands that the real opportunities are really the real greenfield opportunities. There is a lot of exploration that goes around existing assets, and that's fair enough too, because those things can extend. But it's rare to, as we have got to have a 2,500 square kilometre greenstone belt that hardly anyone's touched.
It's where fortunes are made, isn't it? It's where the really big money can be made from a greenfields find. The sort of nickel or lithium thing you're talking about is a real company making life-changing stuff.
Yeah, and look, it's not a unique story by any stretch. If you look at a lot of the major discoveries over the last 20 years, other people have had the ground before. They've had some smoke there or some hints, but it's a lot of work to understand what you're looking at, and a lot of work physically on the ground as much as the analysis that goes into it.
This area, though, it would benefit from the modern exploration techniques, wouldn't it? I mean, particularly the geophysics.
Absolutely.
The world's come a long way there.
Yeah, well, if you read the annual reports of some of the people that have been there before, the thickness of the bush in some areas was prevented them from actually putting a foot on the ground. So, even though it's only, 370 kilometres northeast of Perth, it's still, pretty difficult country. People have held it probably based on the same sort of thoughts we might have had, or other people have had around gold, but never actually got out there. So the geophys is a big help, and that's why you did such a large VTEM survey, was to get a handle on, we knew there's greenstone up there because we've actually rock chipped all the way up to the top and understood that there is some outcropping at the top there that has got nickel in it. So we knew that this thing could possibly go the whole 80-kilometre strike. And then as I said before, we merged all of the magnetic data sets that we could get and started to understand that there's a lot of structure there. And from there, the VTEM has been a bit of a breakthrough.
So it sounds like you've already got, as I said, to that pointy end, there's a bit of action coming up, a lot of action coming up from August, really. The rigs will be turning, you're chasing the nickel, the lithium, and even having another go at the rare earths. There's clearly smoke on the rare earths front as well. Yeah. But it's obviously the lithium, the nickel that is probably the hottest prospect, fair to say?
Yeah, most evolved,
Yeah. So a lot coming up there. Luke, thanks for your help and your time. You've obviously done a lot of work below the waterline. You don't always get a lot of thanks for that in this business, do you? It's, as I said, it's tedious. It can be hard work, but you're spending shareholders' money, so you've got to make sure that the holes you drill, you've got good reason for putting them where you do.
Yeah, well, I suppose to summarise that, we're a very aggressive explorer. So, we've only been listed for less than 2 years. We've done a reasonable amount of drilling, and we've done a large-scale VTEM, a lot of moving loop. So even though it's a big area, I think we've gone at it pretty aggressively, and I think we're probably on the cusp now of being able to narrow down to what we're really looking for. And in terms of whether you get a lot of thanks or not, I think the work's good fun at the core of it, especially if you think you're onto something.
It's genuine greenfields exploration, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with it, and I'll watch this space carefully over the next few weeks. I look forward to seeing those rigs turning on the nickel and the lithium.
No worries. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Luke.
You've been listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast, produced by Resource Media, hosted by Paul Armstrong for Reed Corporate. Please note that Reed Corporate does not provide investment advice, and investors should seek personalised advice before making any investment decisions.